November 19th. I think being lost at sea with no end to our journey was better than this. If I had only known this is what awaited us, I would have gladly sailed on and on throughout the kingdom, and my mother would have understood. Shame fills me like wine in a leather flask, swelling me from inside and sealing my heart in its darkness. I remember the summer of my mother's goats bore 2 tawny kids, and how my mother let them suckle and grow and kept them about until they were almost as big as their mother. When she finally took them to market, she cried all the way home and wouldn't speak the rest of the night. The next day, she said only that it broke her heart to see families torn apart. I laughed at her and said it was only goats. My first shame. But the sound of that nanny's bleating those nights kept me awake and filled me too with a sad ache. I would not laugh at my mother anymore. One day this past week, our party had taken on 7 head of women, large and small, and 3 children. This is the way it's recorded in the captain's journal. By nightfall, a small band of native men rowed out to us and asked to be taken too. These were the husbands and fathers. Columbus thought they would make good servants and interpreters, so he welcomed them aboard. If goats upset my mother, this surely would tear her apart. So they were trying to take the kids and the wives, and the men volunteered to go. November 25th. We are still sailing here and there, searching every island for pieces of gold and signs of Chinese civilization. But so far there is nothing. On one island, I was the first to spot the tall pine trees. Trees straight enough and strong enough to make a new mizzenmast and lateen yard for the Nina. Columbus says this is a splendid island, and with its wonderful trees, it can be a future shipyard where seagoing ships will someday be built and sent off. We see an island that the natives on board tell us is Boho. They say it is a tremendous island and that the people there have faces like dogs and a single eye in the center of their foreheads. They tell us that when these people capture prisoners, they eat them. Columbus believes they may be Chinese soldiers. Come on. Then there is some bad news. On the 21st, unexpectedly and for no apparent reason, other than maybe greed and rivalry, the Pinta suddenly sailed away. We have not seen her since then. Now we are only 2 ships. December 3rd, we are anchored in a quiet harbor in scattered showers. It has been raining for days without the slightest breeze or gust. Many of the men went ashore to wash their clothes and themselves in the river. 2 men wandered into the jungle and returned to tell us they had come upon a village. Where hanging from a post was a basket with a man's head in it. I don't think I will go looking in any baskets I find. One day I went ashore with Diego, Columbus, and a native who was working as an interpreter for us. The captain gave Diego a bag of brass rings, glass beads, and bells, and told him to see what trading he could do. Diego agreed, but I could tell he does not like to do this. A group of natives joined us, but these were not so friendly, and they had little to trade. Their eyes were distrustful, and their bodies were painted red with bundles of feathers and darts hanging from them. When we finished our meager trade, they gathered at the stern of our small boat in the river, and one began making a speech we could not understand. The others began to shout in response. Columbus stood by, looking pompous and arrogant as he waited, but the interpreter with us turned pale and began to shake. He told the captain to go back to the Santa Maria at once, but they were planning to kill us. I hopped right in the boat to go back, but Diego didn't move and Columbus laughed. He interpreted the village speechmaker and drew his sword from his scabbard. With a gentle smile on his face, he showed him the steel glistening in the sun, sliced clear through a leather strap the speechmaker bore around his neck, and the man's beads tumbled into the sand. Next, the captain had one of his men demonstrate his crossbow. At this, the crowd of natives turned and ran to the trees. Our interpreter was still not comforted. He jumped into the boat beside me and trembled, beckoned us to get aboard and get back to the ship quickly. The captain was slow about it. He talked of how he admired the workmanship of the natives, but trouble with these pages, sorry guys. How cowardly they were. They were so timid. 10 of our men could frighten away thousands of them. I said nothing. The captain expects nothing of me. I just watched silent, Diego's back straining and bulging in rhythm as he helped row us back to the Santa Maria. December 13th. It is difficult to keep a journal now that we are so busy, traveling from island to island and up and down rivers and in and out of harbors. There are no longer endless empty jaunts into the western sky. But one thing has not changed. The crew continues to grumble. They are saying this is not Asia at all, that this whole trip has been a costly failure. They say that they will be laughed at when we finally return home. There are no silks, no treasures, and just tiny trinkets of gold. All we will bring back are spools of rough cotton thread, a few rustic spears, and some natives who grow quieter and thinner with each day they spend on board the Santa Maria. Columbus goes on naming everything he touches. He sees a cape of land and he sees says, I christen you Cabo de la Estrella, or hail Cabo de Elefante. I name you Cabo de San Juan, or Island de la Tortuga, and you I name Puerto de San Nicola. I am surprised he doesn't name the birds as they fly by. Every time his feet touch, he thrusts across into the sand and claims it for the King and Queen of Spain. The natives no longer greet us with gifts and song. Now, when they see us, they run. I am glad for this, except yesterday, 3 sailors ran after them and brought them back to the ship, a most beautiful young girl. Columbus wanted to talk to her and convince her that we are harmless and wish only to trade. There seemed to be an instant tenderness between her and the other native women on board, whom I've written of before. She wanted to take the women with her when she left. Columbus refused, of course, telling her to go back to her people and tell them he means no harm. The women touched hands and spoke to each other in quiet whispers. Once she was gone, the captain turned to me and said, Did you see the gold rings in her nose? The next day he sent a party to search for her and her village, and they found the village, but it had been abandoned. The fires were still warm, but not a soul was tending them. Soon they found people hiding and persuaded them to come out. They reported they even saw the beautiful girl on the shoulders of her husband, but when they returned to the ship, they did not bring gold or silks. More blessed parrots.